Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called China Strike by author Stephen Mertz. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Let's talk about China Strike.
Let's talk about China Strike.
China Strike is a book that we both read, and we both enjoyed. We don't want to give the wrong impression that we did not enjoy reading this book.
Yeah, this is a man's honest attempt at really writing some sort of spy thriller, and I really enjoy that passion that you must have to do this.
Well, that's the thing is this guy, he really has like the I'm Ian Fleming identity. Stephen Mertz, the author, you can see in his bio, it says he's like a U.S. Army veteran.
Yeah.
And so you get the impression that he really treats this as like not just a fantasy of, I'm going to write a spy thriller because I like spy movies.
Yeah.
This is a honest and pure distillation of a man's fascination with the U.S. Army and global political conflict.
Yeah.
However, while it is honest and pure in that sense, it is also terrible at actually
achieving the goals.
Yeah, because it really does come off as like a cheesy action movie script. That's what you get when you read it.
Yeah.
But you can tell that there's a different impression that the author has.
And at a certain point when I was reading this book, it's always ambiguous as to how much real combat he saw, but pursuing an artistic...
Well, I can tell he doesn't know much about combat because there's a section of the book, which we'll get to, I think it's chapter 3, where one of our characters is pursuing some Chinese thugs, and it describes how one of them executes a taekwondo kick. Even though taekwondo is a Korean martial art.
Well,
doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
It's part of what gives this book its charm.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it comes from pure intent, but it's a mess.
Yeah, there's no deceit about what he was trying to do here, as with some other cheaply written books. There is honest intention here, and I appreciate that. But the execution is... Wow.
Yeah. And we could talk about cheap. I mean, this book was 99 cents.
Yes. I think that's another really important factor. Like, you can only judge, I think, these sort of products by the value that the author pushes them out with.
Yeah. You can tell, like, this is book 16 of this series. Not chronologically, I guess, because this doesn't seem to be like the 15th sequel in a series. It's kind of a standalone thing. But he has written at least 16 of these books in this series.
And they're not short either. They're not short books at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I haven't got a word count on it, but it took me a few days to read, so...
Yeah, so let's talk about what we read and how much we did enjoy it. Because... while this book I wouldn't describe as entertaining in the way that the author probably thinks it is.
Yeah, it does have that B-movie quality of where you watch it and you're like, oh man.
And you know that he was writing this, he was like, man, this is fucking badass.
Yeah.
Because every character is introduced in this way. We're never really shown why Jim Bradley, the first character we're introduced to, is a badass. We are literally just given like a big info dump of this dude is a fucking badass. He's a CIA operative. He's undercover in China.
And he's American.
He's ruthless. He fought in Nam. Like, he knows about weapons. He knows about how to spot a tail and this kind of shit. But we don't see any of that.
Yeah, no, it's not as if he's like taking apart his pistol or something like that, showing his expertise with a gun. It just tells you that he is an expert with guns. And and that's because, why waste time with that kind of stuff when you can get to the fucking dope fight scenes? Yeah, where people's heads blow up.
And the guns are referred to as flesh shredders.
And room brooms.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could read the synopsis and it would tell you about a guy named Mark Stone, just referred to as Stone. That's another thing I want to talk about is sort of the character names in this book. The names of these characters are brilliant. You have Mr. CIA. His name is Jim Bradley. Doesn't get more American. Then you have super secret agent, undercover, ex-Vietnam war veteran, badass sleuth, killing machine, Mark Stone.
And I would really describe this, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, more as a superhero.
Yeah, the book really treats them like not just honorable combat veterans, but they are ruthless killing machines with high sense of morality, and they are icons to be worshipped. And they are worshipped in this story.
By everyone. By literally everyone. Everyone they meet is just like, wow, I trust you. You inspire trust. Like, what?
That's one of the best and worst parts of this book, which is everything that our characters do, which is, the essential America going into another country and kind of exerting its influence without being asked to. And everything they do, whether it's like ruthlessly crushing the head of an Asian thug against a wall or like executing a Chinese gangster for betraying them. And the people around them, all the like Chinese people that they're saving are like, oh, thank you, you merciful Americans.
Valiant heroes. Yeah.
We so value your ability to come in and save us all from problems we can't resolve on our own.
And they murder a lot of people in this.
Yeah. And it is murder. There are some people they don't need to kill. And like at one point, Mark Stone, our hero, Mr. Badass, he really just executes someone fucking point blank.
Point blank, right through the eyes.
After torturing him.
As he's begging for his life. And he does this in front of what is...
a young girl, like...
Yeah, a civilian, a young girl.
And the book almost gives you this idea that she's traumatized by it. She like gives him this cold 1,000-yard stare afterwards. But then it elaborates, this turns her into wanting to be a militant against the oppressive Chinese government. Like she sees this and she's like, wow, I want to be more like those fucking psycho Americans and just like indiscriminately murder people, even though they don't need to.
Yeah. And I think by the end of the book, she joins the fight.
Yeah, she does.
She was going to flee China, but then she's like, no, I've come to see that murdering my fellows
is the only way forward. I don't need to, escape this conflict and go live out a happy life
with my now widowed mother and my little child sister. No. I'm going to join the paramilitary force here at work.
Yeah. There's a lot of messages in the subtext of this book, and they're very clear on what they are. Stephen Mertz, he doesn't leave much to interpretation. In case you didn't get character motivations, he spends a lot of time telling you exactly what they are. So, the first character we need to learn about, because Jim Bradley is the first guy we're introduced to, but he doesn't matter. He dies in the first chapter. He's Mr. CIA. He's looking for this guy, Dr. Yu, who is like a political dissident within the Chinese Communist government. He's doing something to help the CIA. Like he has information that they want. So he's like undercover as a dissident.
Yeah.
You always have in stories like this, I don't think with the intent. I think Stephen Mertz thinks this book is realistic, but there's always this sense of like heightened reality. Everyone involved is like an extreme.
Yeah.
Jim Bradley is the best CIA agent of all time. Mark Stone is the best superhero American agent of all time. Dr. Yu is like the best nuclear physicist in China. It's always an extreme.
Yeah.
There's no like sense of grounding these characters.
No. When it goes over the other characters in the MIA Hunter Squad, the British guy and the Hog Wiley, they're both like, the best pilot that's ever graced the earth and the best, I don't know what to call Hog Wiley, murderer.
Hog Wiley. Yeah, Hog Wiley is another character. So he's from Texas. Of course he is. He says things like, oh, horse feathers. And it's very clear-cut. It's very stereotypical. And that's why there's no time spent on character development, because you know the trope already. We have Colonel Kwan and Shen, who is like the faceless, agreeable lieutenant. Those are our villains, basically, the two bad guys. Now, at this point in the story, it's something like Dr. Yu's family has already been extracted to Hong Kong, and he's the last one to get out. He needed to stay because he had more information, or they wanted to keep him in China with the party as long as they could to get the most information.
Yes.
Well, Jim Bradley gets there. He's trying to get Dr. Yu out of this safe house, and Colonel Kwan and his right-hand man, Shen, show up, and Bradley makes a valiant effort to stop this from happening. He's so American. Dr. Yu is like apologizing to him for like getting him into this problem. He says, oh, I'm professing my gratitude, Mr. Bradley. Thank you for risking your life for me. And Jim Bradley, he's not even paying attention. He's just, like I said, doctor, it's my job. Damn, I wish I had a gun right now. Like...
Yeah, I find all of these characters, and more so like, Hog Wiley and stuff like that, but they don't take any part of the whole mission seriously.
No, yeah.
They just seem to joke around like it's a cartoon or something like that.
Yeah. You'll see in like one of the scenes, 2 seconds after a group of Chinese thugs spray down a coffee shop in Chinatown in San Francisco.
Oh yeah. Those Tong punks.
Our heroes are like making jabs at each other and snickering and like making jokes about how funny the situation is.
One of the Tong punks tries to steal the van that they came in, and Hog Wiley drags him out through the window in a rather gruesome fashion, because apparently like the glass like cuts him as he pulls him out, and then he holds him in a fashion which I can only describe as a battering ram, and then smashes him into a wall head first, crunching his head, and then Hog Wiley laughs as he tosses the corpse away.
Yeah. As the dude who was trying to steal their van is getting away, the other guy, who's like a British dude, he like shoots out the tire of the car so the van doesn't get away.
Yes.
And Hog Wiley's like, "Oh, you asshole, you're fucking with my vehicle." Like they're like jabbing, palling around while like 30 innocent people have been massacred downstairs, and they're like, "Oh, the cops will deal with it."
Yeah, the cops will clean up.
Yeah, they're like comic book characters. So, I mean, Jim Bradley gets fucking executed mercilessly by Quan and Chen. And one of my favorite bits in Chapter 1 is actually in one of the last exchanges, right after they killed Jim Bradley, Quan is laughing about the way his body fell or something like that. And he says, "What is it, doctor? Have you never seen a man die before?" And then it says, "You are animals," Chen managed weakly. "Nothing but animals." And then it says, "Mind your tongue, doctor." So right in the first chapter, you have an instance of the author forgetting that Dr. Yu is supposed to say that, not Chen. Chen is like the bad guy.
Yeah.
But he's misattributed the dialogue. It's all over the place. I mean, that kind of shit happens all the time. There's a part like way later in the book where there's just a period inserted in the sentence for no reason.
Oh, I noticed more than one occasion where that happened.
Yeah.
But with this level of book,
you have to give it some grace on some of that stuff. But
yeah, true.
But that's your first chapter, man. He doesn't remember which character is which.
Yeah.
So, okay, and then fucking Quan, just to prove if he's not savage enough, he like pisses on Bradley's corpse. So then we get into chapter 2.
I forgot about that, actually.
He has to be a fucking supervillain. Like, he can't just be like a cold Chinese general. He also has to be like a fucking asshole, just ruthless.
And I didn't want to say anything about like racial undertones in this, but like...
Oh, you can't talk about this book without the racial undertones.
I mean, like, anyone that's Asian doesn't seem to be like a person. I mean that like in the way that he describes... Hog Wiley tossed the Asian, like, like as if they're just like, it's so strange. And the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, to find this book really appealing, you must be like that.
Yeah.
You must be like, oh yeah, toss that Asian.
Yeah. It doesn't try to hide the fact that it's basically just America good, China bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after that, that's our setup. You got Dr. Yu. They're trying to get him out of China. It doesn't work. He's captured by our villains.
Colonel Quang
and Shen. And then we're introduced to our real characters in maybe my favorite chapter of the book, which is we're set in Chinatown, San Francisco. And it's really confusing the way this scene starts. You have Mark Stone, Mr. America. He's supposed to be meeting this dude, John Yang. He's like an informant or something. He's like tied up with the gangs or something. And
the Tongs.
Yeah, so we're explained that Mark Stone is something called an MIA hunter, which is the subtitle of this book and series, I guess, because this is book 16 in the MIA Hunters series. So an MIA hunter is like post-Vietnam, there's a lot of prisoners of war still stuck in Vietnam, but the U.S. government isn't allowed to request their freedom or something because they don't want to disrupt the peace that they've garnered. So the MIA hunters are like a secret government. No, it's something like Mark Stone and his pals just did this on their own. Like they would just go into enemy territory and extract POWs. They were so good at it, and the American government was so happy about it that they just gave them their own division and gave them a license to kill and do whatever the fuck they want in like an unlimited budget.
Yeah, one of the senators got a soft spot for them and then just green flagged everything they were doing, because that's how the government works. A senator can just be like, yo, just do Black Ops missions. Easy peasy. Like, just go do it.
So, I mean, they're on some kind of job in Chinatown. They're trying to meet with this Chinese informant to find out where some more MIAs are. And he's like walking down the street and he sees like a van in the alley. And it's really confusing because at first I thought like, oh, he spotted a tail or something.
Yeah, me too. I thought exactly the same thing. Those are his buddies.
Those are his buddies sitting across the street in the van, and they're like talking to him over an earpiece, but it's never clarified. They never insert those two characters into the scene. Their dialogue just is intermixed, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, okay, I guess there's two other people here, but they're in the car, they're not? I don't know. Either way, the dialogue is terrible. They're talking about, like, this was the signal, Stone said. This is it, I'm going in. Hogg nodded. You're out in 10 and we come in looking for you, but I sure do wish like hell one of us was backing you up in that joint, Sarge. Like, it's so American, man, going to do an operation. Like, it's so stupid.
And it's funny because that sort of dialogue, the terrible dialogue, is interspliced with the classic no-nos of, writing, like explaining exactly what everyone has on them and what brand of car they were in. It's like, this was a GMC van and Stone wore jeans, a black t-shirt and a pea jacket.
Or, like right here. He knew that Wiley was armed with a .357 Magnum and Lowland was armed with a 9mm Beretta. But nonetheless, he felt very much alone. As he approached the metal door, he reached under his jacket and made sure that the .45 was riding loose in its shoulder holster. It's like, there's so much gun porn in this fucking book.
And every time I opened a new chapter, and you scroll down and you can see the .357 all through the text, and I'm like, oh boy.
But that's the thing is like, okay, that paragraph on its own, maybe that suggests to you, oh, Stone knows his weapons. Like, he's an operational tactician and blah, blah, blah. You can infer. No, because the very next paragraph is literally like a bio. It says, during the Vietnam War, Stone had been a master sergeant in the Green Beret. And then it just tells us exactly who he is.
Oh, yeah.
He was a POW who was in a bamboo cage, and his captivity was listed in Hanoi. It just tells you exactly everything you need to know about him.
And I found a lot of those segments, like a lot of those, like, just pure exposition background story drops were very, very, like, ripped off from. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much just John Rambo, you know?
Basically.
And there were other ones. I'll just quickly skip forward because it's too good to miss. The dude that Dr. Yu meets in prison, this American pilot, has been digging tunnels out of the prison, and he's been
19 years.
For 19 years, and he's been putting the soil into his pants and letting it out outside, which is exactly what the dude does from Shawshank Redemption. Like, that is literally exactly what happens. And I was like, dude, you can't do that, mate. Like,
yeah, there's so much stuff like that. Then, like we were saying, there's those two guys, Hogg Wiley and Terrence Lowland, like the silly, happy-go-lucky, crazy pals of his. Okay, we talked about how silly and stupid they are, but their interactions could tell us that stuff.
Yeah.
But instead, we literally get paragraphs that are just like, Lowland and Wiley were men he had known in Vietnam, and they were the best you could find. Lowland was a specialist with explosives, and rude, crude, irascible Wiley could drive anything with a steering wheel or a control stick with unfailing finesse. Both men were seasoned combat veterans who shared Stone's heartfelt commitment to bringing home American servicemen, the government, and, it sometimes seemed, the whole world wanted to forget. Like, it's so over the top. You don't need to see these characters in a scene at all. They just tell us he's like a driver, badass, explosive badass, whatever.
Yeah.
Just give us the whole personality in a spreadsheet. You know, it's that clinical kind of thing. It even has like little suggestions to like, I don't know, book 25 of the MIA Hunters, because the book is constantly reminding you what the stakes are. It's every 5 lines, I swear, it's like, and the stakes were so high. Like, there was a lot at stake for America in the years to come, possibly the security of the nation itself.
And it's not like you could just get that by knowing the situation and people realize, no, he has to tell you exactly that the stakes are high.
And they don't just tell you about characters, they tell you who people are to characters. Stone gets into this tea shop and he meets the Chinese informant.
Where they're smoking opium.
Yeah, he's like, Stone liked John Yang. He had respected the guy before he even met him. Any man who would put his life on the line for what he believed in, the way the agent was doing by going undercover into the Tong, was Stone's kind of man. That type of work took nerves of steel, plenty of guts, and the kind of commitment that money could not buy. Like, it's so fucking...
And this is and it's important to remember that this is every paragraph almost. It's just this again and again and again.
The writing that's not that kind of writing is dialogue that is just so
cheesy and...
Yeah, it's so cheesy and so weird. You know, Stone is like supposed to go into this place and his buddies are supposed to back him up outside. One of them is like, what is it? You're starting to get on my nerves, looking at your watch every bloody few seconds. And Hog Wiley, who refers to the British guy as Teabag.
Oh my god.
Because British people drink tea, Kim.
Get it?
He says, I got that old feeling, Teabag. Oh, bloody hell. You know that old feeling ain't let us down too many times.
Yes, and he gives examples of when the feeling didn't let him down.
And then he says, oh, horse feathers. I was hoping like hell that old feeling was going to be wrong for a change. And then it's, of course, because like 20 Asian gangsters are like busting into the Chinese shop with Mac 10s.
And you know they're Mac 10s.
You know they're Mac 10s because chapter 3 starts off with 6 paragraphs telling us what a Mac 10 is. Telling us how it's the favorite weapon for urban assault, how it's lightweight and easily concealed, and it's called a nasty little room broom, which packs a hell of a wallop.
Yeah, doesn't it have like an actual description of its like rounds per minute or something like that?
It says on full auto, it can spew 45 caliber flesh shredders at a cyclic rate of 1,145 rounds per minute, 30 rounds to a magazine.
Oh my god.
It's so indulgent in the gun and murder porn.
Yeah.
But anyways, they burst into this China shop and just fucking slay everyone inside. Of course, the only people who survive are Mark Stone and the informant, until a second group of Mac 10 wielding Asian Tong members.
Tong punks, I think the preferred term is.
Tong punks, yeah. They're constantly referred to as punks. And kids. He makes sure to tell us, like...
These Tong punks were just kids.
Yeah, and John Yang is ruthlessly murdered. And so they chase them down.
One of them escapes to the rooftops and is pursued by Stone. And another one runs outside while the 2 backup men, Hog Wiley and the Brit,
Teabag,
Terence Lowland, they charge forward in the van and hit him with the car and go outside to inspect the body, and he wakes up, taekwondo's them, and ends up getting his head battering rammed into a wall. Don't
forget about things like one of the Uzi-wielding punks, his gun jams or something. And so Mark Stone engages him in like a physical contest of strength.
Oh, yeah.
And Terence Lowland, the backup, is like yelling out to Mark Stone, "Careful, these lads know their martial arts."
As they do battle on top of the rooftop. Yeah. And how does that battle end, actually, Brady?
Well, yeah, it proceeds to tell us about all the Taekwondo kicks that these Chinese assailants are performing, even though Taekwondo is a Korean martial art, but it doesn't matter. It tells us about how Mark Stone delivers karate punches, and at the end, the remaining assailant, he tries to deliver a double kick. Like, he jumps and puts both of his feet together and tries to go at Stone in like a full body kick. And Stone just steps out of the way and the guy goes flying off the roof. and it talks about how he went sailing right past him and he hits the ground. The British dude is commenting like, "Bloody hell, you always were one for doing things in the most difficult manner." And then Hogg says some shit like, "Looks to me like Sarge was just having himself some fun. You just ain't got any sporting blood in you, Teabag." Like, after they just murdered a bunch of kids. Like, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So he goes in there, he gets tipped off to the fact that they have this guy, Dr. Yu, trapped in China. And our team, our heroes, get tipped off to it. So our MIA hunters are planning to infiltrate China and extract him. Now, before that happens, we get introduced to one of my favorite characters, Carol. Carol Jenner, who...
I'm going to let you take this.
So Carol Jenner, in case you want a short description, the book provides you one. The first sentence that she's in just says, "Carol and Stone were lovers." She was part of the team, had been since the early days of Stone's MIA hunter work, and their private, personal relationship had never interfered with her faultless efficiency as his assistant.
I also, there was a little piece when Carol Jenner, their communications member, is doing some sort of something on the computer, and it says she's sending pertinent intel via a computerized satellite communications hookup. And I was like, isn't that just a jargon dump? Like... computerized satellite communications hookup.
The way it paints Carol, though, there's a part way later in the book, the final mission to go extract Dr. Yu. And she's like sitting back in the US. And then they have one of my favorite lines in the book because it's just so bad. It says, she tried to keep her worries submerged beneath professional efficiency, the way the men she worked with were able to. She tried very hard. She tried not to be a woman. Naturally, that was impossible. Every time Mark Stone left on another mission, yes, she worried like hell. It's like the author's like, she can't turn off her emotions like those brave men can. Like,
yeah, she's a woman.
She's just a woman who sits at home and worries. The racism and the sexism are rampant in this book.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we talked about, okay, yeah, the book is like, it has this pure intent and it's like charming in this way of, you can tell he really believes in this story and that he's telling a tale of valiant, strong men saving lesser people from the conflicts of the world. But that's on the surface. Underneath, it's so unaware of how offensive a lot of it is.
Yeah. And I will say that I don't think, like, many women are going to read this novel. No. So perhaps, like, it's not going to offend anyone. But, I do like to imagine this Stephen Mertz, because it does say in his bio that he goes to universities and gives lectures and things like that. And I'm saying, really? You want this man? Naturally, it's impossible for a woman to not worry. Like...
Yeah. So, I mean, there's other sections where, like, Hogg is talking about, he doesn't make a habit of tagging drivers, just cars. He says something about how there's no way the girl they passed in the Fiat could have been their tail. Because he says, sweet little thing, couldn't have been more than 20. Hell, too young for a codger like me, but cute as a button, just the same.
I also found that if you introduce a young female character like that, and you have a character like Hogg, and he is like, well, she's too young for me, everybody, before anyone asks, like, if I'm interested in her, she's too young. Make sure that you write down in your character file about me that I am not interested in younger people. Like, it's so, like, no one asked you, Hogg. No one asked you for any information like that. Why would you say that?
Yeah, and he goes on to say, oh, that's interesting. You're right about this tale not being put on us by the Asian gangster. He wouldn't put a woman on a job like this.
Yeah.
And then Hogg proceeds to say, hell, Hogg snorted. I wouldn't put a woman on a job like this either. It's so insane, man.
It's funny because we read this separately and we didn't really talk about any of this before we're talking about it now.
No.
And you keep on reading all the things that I've highlighted and I'm just like, exclamation point, so sexist. Like, yeah. Why wouldn't you put a...
That's the thing, is it stands out so clear from everything that's going on.
And then they put a gun to her head, don't they, in the car?
Yeah, he puts the gun to her head. He says he felt no compunction about aiming a gun at a woman.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, he had seen young women in civilian clothes suddenly produce grenades or weapons, which they had used to murderous effect on unsuspecting GIs. You could never tell where death was going to come from. And then it proceeds to describe how beautiful she is. So, her high cheekbones, her flashing almond eyes.
Yeah, and it keeps going on about her almond eyes.
It's sexist, and it's also creepy. He calls her, like, little girl. He calls her kitten later. Not only is their conduct towards her sexist, the way she's written is really bad too, because, they'll say things like, oh, you have to trust us. And she says, I do. There's something about men like you
that inspires trust. Oh.
I think the three of you would not back down before the devil himself. And then Hogg says, sweet stuff, I am the devil. And then she smiles and says, no, I think you men are on the side of the angels. Like, it's not enough to just have them be, like, super badass. They also have to be, like, superior moral angels, and, like, everyone appreciates them, especially, like, the Chinese people that they just indiscriminately murder.
Yeah. They're, like, socially infallible.
Yeah, and she's really just, this young woman, the daughter of Dr. Yu, is just like, oh, thank you so much, you brave American soldiers, thank you. God bless you. And then they proceed to agree with her. They're like, yes, God bless us. Like, it's so...
and God bless America.
Yeah, God bless America, God bless Mark Stone, and God bless the MIA hunters. It's so insane. Anyways, they talk to Carol and she's like, yeah, we're gonna go. There's so much dialogue. Like, there are just pages and pages of them working out what's happening and what's going to happen.
Yeah, I also found an extremely frustrating thing that always happens whenever they meet someone, and they meet people, they keep meeting these characters who are, like, very shady or something like that. And they have 10 minutes of, can you trust me? or you can trust me, like, trust me. And it's like, okay, like, but no one actually talks like that. If you don't trust someone, you don't say, how can I trust you?
And because they're not on the books, they're always like, oh, who could our tail be? Could it be the CIA? I don't know. We can't trust them. Like, just have any kind of communication with the rest of your government and this wouldn't be a problem, but it doesn't matter. I mean, that's the other thing is, you know, when you have stories where there's supposed to be deception involved or the situation's not supposed to be totally clear to you yet, you want the book to be 2 steps ahead of the reader.
Yeah.
But we are constantly 2 steps ahead of the book.
Yeah.
There's a whole subplot in this book about, you know, our MIA hunters are like off the books. And so like when they fuck up a place, when they just like leave carnage in their wake, some detectives will come and investigate. And we're given like full chapters of them speculating like, who could it be? And could this carnage be in the wake of something bigger? And it's like, what does that serve? Because we already know that our heroes are not bad guys. Or at least they're supposed to be heroes, even though they're like completely morally off the fucking wire.
Yeah.
But it's constantly like the story is trying to catch up with you when you should be trying to catch up with the story. It's really odd. The structure of this book is very strange in the way that sometimes he uses scene breaks to suggest a change in location or passage of time. That's what you use them for. But sometimes scenes will just change and work with completely different characters, and there's no break to describe that. Literally from one line of dialogue to the next, we're like with a character on like the bad Chinese side, and then we're back with Mark Stone and the rowdy boys. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
Either way, in the middle of this chapter, it switches to giving us like basically telling us what Hong Kong is.
Yeah, and it's funny because in my notes for this chapter, it says Chapter 4, Wiki page for Hong Kong. Because that's what it is. It's like, Hong Kong is a, semi-autonomous, like...
Yeah, it starts off saying Hong Kong, which translates as Fragrant Harbor, is the Pearl of the Orient.
Oh.
A British dependency with ownership scheduled to revert back to China. Like it just... It's like a wiki page, yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
We don't need this context. We know what Hong Kong is, and if we wanted to know more, we could just go to Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's funny because on my notes page it says Chapter 4, Wiki page for Hong Kong, and then so many shoulder holsters.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of shoulder holstering and unleathering of 357s in preparation for another shootout.
If they need to quickly murder a whole nother lot of Tong punks.
Yeah, a bunch of Asian kids.
Yeah. Oh man.
So, okay, they go to China and they're trying to meet this informant, Ling Pao.
He's the incense master for the 14K triad.
So, yeah, our boys, Mark Stone and the Rowdy Boys, go and find Ling Pao, who is supposedly the man who got Dr. Yu's family out of China and secured their safety in Hong Kong.
Yeah. It seems like his job is like to smuggle people.
Yeah, so he's a high-ranking gang member, but he also helped them, so it's a bit questionable where his loyalties lie. At least it should be. That's how you would imagine a character like that being written in. But we're told very early on that he just plays both sides and gives to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
Because as soon as Mark Stone leaves, 10 seconds later, Colonel Kwan calls him up and is like, you saved the daughter and wife. Now we want them. We'll pay you for them. And Ling Pao is just like, yeah, okay. It's not hidden in any way that he is just this type of person.
No, and for the most part, I ignored a lot of the contradictions and stuff like that. But in this particular chapter, this one was too painful because he says that he and the triad will ruthlessly kill entire families if people realize who he is, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, I'll kill, people and their whole families just if they know who I am and there's a risk of my cover being blown or whatever.
Yeah.
But while he is telling this to him, he's also telling this American agent, this, what I'm just going to say instead of MIA hunter because I detest that fake thing. I'm just going to say CIA agent. He tells the CIA agent, who for all intents and purposes, that's what he is to Ling Pao, that he is Ling Pao, a top-ranking member. Like, he tells him exactly who he is, exactly about how he murders people and all. And so what? He he just told you that he'll kill entire families if you knew who he was, and now he's telling you exactly who he is. And by the time I also got up to this point, I did make a note of saying, like, halfway in, you know what's going to happen. You almost know what is going to happen in every oncoming chapter.
Yeah. At some point, like, because in a normal story, you would think all this, like, okay, I'll phrase this in two ways. In a normal bad story, one where, like, it's very clear the author is trying to do, like, foreshadowing, you would think all this, like, oh, can I trust him? Can he trust me? Would lead to some deception later on. Dr. Yu is secretly bad and he's going to betray the Americans at the last second.
Yeah.
That would be something you expect from a bad story, where, like, it's so clear that that's the twist. But this is even a cut below where that just doesn't happen. It's literally, everyone is just clear on their intentions, and the Americans are good guys, the Chinese are bad guys. Dr. Yu isn't like a secret double anything. If there's a double agent, they just tell you as soon as you meet them.
Yeah, and it really is like that cliche where the supervillain always tells you their evil plan as they think they've got you trapped, and they explain, and then at the last second you get out of it, and now you know their plan because they just told you it.
Well, I mean, there really is a scene like that at the end. Quan he says straight up, like, you won't tell anyone this, so I'm just gonna tell you, like...
And then next minute...
he gets killed. So... there's another shootout. Ling Pao sends some assailants to capture the wife and daughter to the house where he sent them, and our boys fight them off. Everyone's wielding Uzis all the time, always. Some of them run off, and Hog Wiley strides over to Laolin and says, "Gall dang it, Teabag. You just let two of them get away. You're going soft or what?" And he says, "Sorry, mate, I just don't fancy greasing guys in the back." And Hog says, "Yeah, I reckon not. Oh well, to each his own. Some son of a bitch wants to grease me. I'm gonna grease him from the front, the back, the top, or the bottom. Ain't no two ways about it." Like,
greasing. They're supposed to be professionals, They're supposed to be the best of the best, and they're always like, "Don't fancy greasing guys in the back." Like,
no, he does fancy greasing. He wants to grease them everywhere in all ways. He just says, I don't care if he's a young kid who's just been corrupted by the system he's been brought up in. I'm going to fucking assassinate him from behind with an Uzi, and I'm not going to have any more qualms about it.
And throughout the book, he emphasizes how these guys don't care about who or how they kill people.
No, they relish in it.
Yeah, they really relish it, and that's why they're probably the best.
Hog has the best quotes in this book. He really does. One of them, Stone, says something like, "Oh, if we run into them again, don't unload on them with that hog leg of yours. There'll be civilians around. We don't want to expose them to fire." You have one little, like, inkling of, like, hey, remember that...
maybe we shouldn't be blasting civs. Like,
maybe we shouldn't be, like, indiscriminately pulling out our 357s everywhere, especially because we're off the books and we're going to look like we're, assailants or something. And Hog says, "I don't hit what I don't shoot at. But okay, Sarge, if we do run into them, I'll keep Betsy in her holster."
Betsy in her holster.
And then he says, "I'll just break their necks with my bare hands. It sure does piss me off when people take shots at me." And that's the end of the scene. "Oh, don't worry. If there are civilians around, I won't fucking murder them with my room broom."
Yeah. I'll just snap their necks.
With my bare hands.
In front of crowds of people.
We don't want to give the idea that you can't have a character like this in a story where they're indulgent in their own violence, if that's, like, presented as a character flaw, like, or that he's ruthless.
Yeah.
But it's, like, it's portrayed more in the way that, like, he's a fucking badass dude. He doesn't hit what he doesn't shoot at. He doesn't need his 357 hand cannon to explode the head of young Asian men. He'll just break their necks with his bare hands and smash them into the wall, like...
yeah.
So after they murder more Chinese people and they come back and they've had time to decompress with the mother and the daughter of Dr. Yu, there's just more, like, America wanking. "Thank you very much," said Yim Fong. "You are good people, I can tell. You risked your lives to protect us and to get us to safety." Like, they're constantly just like, "Oh, you Americans, you're so good.
You're just risking it all.
The stakes have never been higher and you're putting yourself on the line." I gotta love this dialogue. From Hog, did the Frisco cops get a lead on who had John Yang iced? It's such a crack up, like...
grease him, ice him, take him out, like...
Get him with them flesh shredders.
Hog Wiley and his broom taking out Tong punks with ruthless efficiency.
I can't. So what happens next? I mean, they go back to Ling Pao. They talk about, they call him, Ling's oily voice oozed across the wire. How may I be of service to you? Oh, he's so oily.
He's one of those greasy, greasers need to be greased.
I needed to grease myself just to read this.
I needed to smoke some opium to read this, actually.
Well, don't go smoking opium in San Francisco, dude, because you'll get room-broomed.
It's like, I like to sometimes picture the author writing the story, you know?
Yeah.
And he starts out and he's like, all right, so I'm going to have, it's in Chinatown in San Francisco, and he walks into this underground club and they're all smoking opium because they're Chinese.
Yeah, it's smoky and atmospheric and the lights are low and everyone's eyes are dim.
Yeah, and they're all just junkies and Tong punks and the American comes in.
And he comes in with his chest raised and his .357 unleathered in his shoulder pouch.
His shoulder holster.
There's so much unleathering in this book, I can't handle it.
Oh, yeah.
So we get back to Dr. Yu. He's still in his cell.
And he meets this new character.
Yeah, in like a very strange and confusing scene. Out of nowhere, Dr. Yu's like laying down on a bed and an American man climbs out from under the bed in the cell. And like isn't surprised at all to see him there. He's just like, oh, hello. He says, I'm Captain Lyle Deming, USAF. Yeah. And then they shake hands and...
You figure out that he's a prisoner too. He's been a prisoner for 19 years. He got shot down over Vietnam or whatever, and they took him back here, and the American government doesn't acknowledge his disappearance, you know, so he's the MIA.
He's the MIA that our boys are looking for.
No. They're not. He's just like, he's an additional thing, which is really, really funny because they're here to save this dude, this Dr. Yu.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because this is MIA Hunters, book 16, but most of the plot is about them not doing MIA hunting. They're trying to save this nuclear physicist from China. Why they care, I don't know. I guess because they want redemption for Jim Bradley, the CIA man. But then they discover that there is an MIA, this Lyle Deming, and they're like, oh, we the MIA hunters. We'll go hunt him down and save him and Dr. Yu at the same time. This guy is like way too happy-go-lucky too to be like a fucking 19-year POW.
Yes, he's like so giddy about the whole thing. You can put someone in prison for 2 months and totally change their personality. And this guy's been in there 19 years and he's...
Not even 2 months. The Stanford prison experiment was like a week or something and it totally fucked those kids up. And this dude's been here for 20 years and he's just like, not good.
Easy, bruh.
All good. And then, yeah, there's more like America good, China bad, because Dr. Yu says something along the lines of, I've always admired the tenacity and toughness of spirit of you Americans, and I respect your grace and wit in the face of seemingly overwhelming adversity. You possess all of these qualities, Captain. It's my honor to know you. For a man in such a situation as yourself, you are in remarkably good spirits. And it's like, yeah, he is in remarkably good spirits. He's been a POW for 19 years. But he's like joking the whole time, and of course he's just like, oh, you're so courageous, you Americans, you're so witty and so brilliant and so valiant.
And I'm not sure if we mentioned this, but Dr. Yu has a heart condition, so he had an open heart transplant or something like that, and so his heart's very weak, and the reason that the bad guys, they wouldn't torture him because they think he'll die because he has a weak heart. So they don't want to torture him in any, like, excessive or, you know, violent way.
Yeah, and we'll get to the heart condition later because it's absolutely hilarious how this
all plays out.
But so we're back with Yim Fong, and Mark Stone checks in with her, and he's like, oh, are you all right? She says, it's terrible what happened to Ling, the gangster. And Mark's like, yeah, it was terrible. Even though he's the one who fucking murdered him, point blank, mercilessly. And she talks about, oh, you who walk on the dark side of life, the side most of us never see, and you're so selfless. She says, the things you are called upon to do, you do without care for yourself, only care for others.
Brady, the way he executed that mob boss was so selfless.
Yeah, and she even says any decent man would feel revulsion at what you did, but you are not like Ling Pao. He was an evil man. You tortured him for information to help us find my father. Saving an innocent man's life is what your mission is. And she says, thank you for understanding. Don't doubt yourself. You did the right thing. And he says, I don't have any doubts. I guess sometimes I just wish I wasn't so goddamn good at what I do.
Ah, yes, that was my favorite line, I think.
He's so good at killing people without remorse and mercilessly when they have no chance of fighting back. He's just too damn good at it.
And he hates it. He hates that he's so good at blowing people's heads off.
Yeah. It's a real burden to be so morally superior and really to have to take on these challenges. You know, he didn't have to murder that man, but I guess he did. You know, he walks the dark side of life. His mission is not to save her father. It's to murder a gangster who was the one who originally helped her get away in the first place.
Yeah, that's what I also loved about it, is this guy is like, he says it himself. He goes to the highest bidder.
Yeah, he's a morally compromised, opportunist.
Yeah.
He's not even nearly as evil as Kwan, who just pisses on people's corpse because he's bad.
And yet that warrants a trialless execution. Judge, jury, executioner, all done in a single stroke. Oh, and torture, sorry.
No, for Mark Stone, it's torture first, then execution.
He also gives him 3 seconds to he's like, answer me this. And he doesn't answer. And he's like, all right.
Too late.
Boom.
Yeah. And then we're almost at the end.
Yeah.
So they go over their plan, how they're going to rescue Dr. Yu.
He's going to be, because he's going out in the laundry.
Yeah.
And he's going to be in a laundry truck, and they're going to find him on the road or whatever.
And Yim Fong, the daughter, is upset that Atak, her boyfriend, is going to be a part of the fight. They get on the car and then they're on their way out or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I was really almost fed up at this point.
Yeah. At this point in the story, I just wanted the final shootout so I could really just...
Yeah, we know what's going to happen. They're going to break him out and there's going to be another shootout. They're going to unleather their 357s one last time.
They're going to unleather them from their shoulder holsters and blow tangerine-sized holes out the back of these tongue-pumped skulls.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the way to the battle, you have that moment of okay, sometimes when a character is about to go into a battle, they have an introspective moment where they reflect on what has transpired and what is to come and their place. And in this book, it's Mark Stone. He's thinking about death, all the death that they've seen and all the death that he's caused. But he also thought about life and how pure and epic his life has been. And he's talking about there's a bullet with my name on it somewhere out there.
Yes, somewhere out there's a bullet, but not today. Not today.
Yeah. Not today. It's that kind of shit. And it's just it's exactly what you'd expect.
And so we come to it. They find the panel truck and they find him. Dr. Yu is not unconscious, but he's weak.
He's in the back of the van and they toss Deming an Uzi. Hog has a backpack filled with Uzis and he whips one out. He tosses it and Deming catches it effortlessly. And he's like, think one of you boys can show me how to work this thing?
Oh, Brady, you fool. You fool. You forgot. Stephen Mertz has explained this already. Back when they executed the mob boss, he had his 2 guards, and they had Uzis, and when they slit their throats, Hog tells Laughlin, go pick up those Uzis and take them with us. Yeah. So he's thought about this. I swear, he thinks more about the guns than he does about the characters. He makes sure that every single room broom is accounted for. And so, when I read this, I was like, where did he get the Uzi from? Oh, I remember. They took them from those dead guys they sliced the throats from. And I love how they were like, oh, yes, make sure you get their Uzis. We know how effective those room brooms are.
Yeah, what was it? 1,100 rounds in a second?
Oh, yeah. 1,100 rounds in a second.
Or whatever the fuck it was.
Doesn't make any sense.
30 rounds to a magazine.
Oh, God.
Okay. Yu is incapacitated. He can barely speak. And Yim Fong is oh, we have to get him to a doctor. I think he's having a heart attack. And Stone is no. He just says, she's we have to get him to a doctor. He says, no, he said sternly. Every physician is closely watched by the secret police. Like, we have to stay here and conclude our shootout instead of rushing him to a doctor.
Yeah.
And she's like, but his heart. And they're just like, no, it doesn't matter. Like, we have to keep shooting at the Chinese. Withdraw that Uzi. Like,
yeah, get the Uzis out. There's only one way out of here.
So, I mean, they're escaping.
Yeah, and Dr. Yu is talking with his daughter and is very like, am I dead yet?
He's like basically in cardiac arrest.
Yeah. And then she starts talking to him in Chinese, which is, of course, all skipped over. And Stone tells Hogg, snag the gizmo and punch up the code. It's time to connect with Carol. Which is the professional way of saying, get in contact with Carol, please. We need to organize our escape.
Yeah.
And so they are on their road and
they make it out like into the country, and Quan and Chen arrive.
They cut them off.
They talk about how like Quan shows up and he says, so you have brought the lovely Yim Fong. That's like the 6th time they describe her as lovely. It's so gross.
Because if a girl is in the story, she has to be eye candy, Brady. She has to be hot, and she has to be an object of everyone's affection.
But she also has to be like super appreciative and at the whim of everyone's demands.
I will just do what everyone tells me to do.
And I will accept my place as the worrying woman.
Yeah. Among the other worrying women in the story.
So
the armored personnel carriers block the roads. Colonel Quang makes them drop the Uzis out of the side of the car, but they keep their 357s
leathered.
Yeah, they keep them leathered for now.
And because it says, as careful as Quan was, it had not occurred to him that Stone and his unit would be wearing concealed weapons. Why? Why would that not occur to him? They've been talking this whole book about how badass and dangerous these men are. And he's so careful, he's so paranoid, but there's no way they could be concealing weapons.
And basically what their operation is, and they're like top-ranking military officials.
Yeah. Their
plan is to get on the horn to Ling Pao and be like, yo, can you kill... Can you kill Mark Stone for us?
Because we have the fucking backing of the entire Chinese secret police and government army, but we need some Tong gang member, incense master, to take care of the most super badass American kill squad of all time.
Yeah, and when we do finally confront them, we'll go ourselves. You know, because that seems like a reasonable...
Yeah, it's brilliant. It really is brilliant. And then Quan steps around to inspect the truck where Dr. Yu is, and his daughter is like, he's dead.
Yeah, and he is dead. That's not a trick.
Yeah, no, he died in the back of the van because of his heart problem.
The guy that they were trying to save is dead.
The whole point of this book and all this, like, there's a bullet with everyone's name on it out there somewhere. No, the guy just
dies in the arms of his daughter from a heart condition. And
the fight breaks out. Quan is running away. Stone wrestles him to the ground. He spends no time putting his neck in a vice grip, and then he snaps his neck.
Like a dried twig. Boom! And when I think of snapping a dried twig, I think of snapping it clean in half, like apart. So when I read that, I was like, oh, so he ripped his head off or something. Like, because a dried twig doesn't, like, it's not held together after you snap it. It's broken.
Yeah.
Like,
And just before that, we skipped over where Chen, the right-hand man, dies.
Yeah.
Deming gets at him with his Uzi. It says, the blistering burst. Trigger didn't sound like much under the heavier rifle fire, but it was enough to pulp Chen open from crotch to face. He performed a shuddering death stumble in a red shower of his own blood.
Oh, man. And then it ends with the bullet on his name on it was still waiting for himself.
Yeah, Stone muses that bullet is waiting for him somewhere, but not this time. No, damn it, not this time. This time, they were heading home with an MIA named Captain Lyle Deming, another American fighting man rescued from a long-ago war that was part of today.
Dr. Yu hadn't made it, but oh well, he's Chinese.
Yeah, the main guy we were supposed to save doesn't matter. Like, we got that American out, though. And then, yeah, that's the end.
For Mark Stone, that was good enough. That's the line that ends it all.
I guess it was good enough for Stephen Mertz, too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's China strike. We've just taken you into the red zone, and now we're back out through the other side.
We didn't complete the mission, but,
Yeah, so, I mean, we've talked a lot about this book now. Let's talk about the context of this book.
Now, the reviews for these books are all so good.
Yeah, China Strike has a 5-star rating based on 5 reviews.
All of his books are like that. They're all 5 to 7 reviews, all quite good, with the odd 3-star review or something like that. This 3-star review reads more of the same blood and gore, different country.
I mean, she's not wrong.
Very true. Yeah, I can imagine that's really... Listen to this review, 4 stars. A manual on killing. I was furnished this book free in return for an honest review. So I guess he means that he was given this book for free for an honest review. This guy must be illiterate because this review is just... The only upgrade is a new country. I gave the book 4 stars only because it is well written. I would recommend this book only to those that like reading about killing.
Yeah.
There you go. You can see that all of these books are like, I call it friend reviewed.
Yeah. All the reviews are within like 3 days. Like they're all from January 23rd to 27th. It's always the same shit. This one, there's no stops in the sentence at all. A really good book, 5 stars. This has been one of my favorite books. I have read all of them. If you like a good series, you will love these. Can't wait till the next one. Thank you, Stephen Mertz. He spells it wrong. Keep them coming. Another one, I really like the characters in this series, and they always have good stories. Far as I'm concerned, he can just keep writing them. So that's why you get 16 of these books, because the people he writes these for love it. And that's fine. You know, we're not here to trash on him as a writer or the fact that he has an audience that appreciates these things.
But I'm not sure if he does have an audience that appreciates these things, because all of these reviews I'm seeing is, I got this for a free review and 3 stars. More of the same blood and gore. You know, it's all like, it just seems like all of these people have received the book for free and they're just giving it a whatever review and they just don't give a fuck about it.
Yeah.
And then the cleanest, strongest prose in the business. Gravetapping.com. Okay. Action driven by Publishers Weekly. And then Mertz is an action specialist by Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine.
What are these places? Like,
yeah, that's a good question.
Well, that's what you'll find. These reviews that praise these things, like, it's always, the review is just a synopsis. They just tell you, wow, it's so action-packed, and, like, they saved this MIA guy. How cool is that? That's not a review. You
could get that all from the title.
You're not breaking down anything that happened and why is that effective, why is it not. You're just saying what happened.
Yeah, and then you get a review 1 star from the poor soul who has not been either given $5 to give it a good rating, but instead given a very real review, given it 1 star, titled Too Many Edit Errors, saying, while this book was free, I got everything I paid for. Typos on top of typo, even 2 full paragraphs that repeated.
Oh my god.
Good thing I didn't waste my money buying the book. It really is sad. It was a greatly written book, but it was ruined by not editing correctly. Well, I'm not sure about if it was greatly written, but, you know,
yeah.
The fact that there are doubly repeated passages. And it's always tricky because when you get these reviews, I don't know what the level of knowledge or detail these people go into their review. They just, if someone gives you something for free to review and says, can you please review this? You're probably just going to not read it and give it a good review because you like the idea that you are reviewing something, you know?
Yeah.
But you don't actually want to read.
No.
No one wants to go through that.
So, is there anything else we should talk about regarding China Strike? We've lamented at how difficult it is to read at times, but I enjoyed reading it. Like, for the most part, I had a lot of good laughs, mostly ones of incredulity, where I'm laughing at how stupid some of the scenes are, and how sexist and how racist and how poorly constructed everything is.
Yeah, this book is $1.16. On Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got about $1 worth of content here to enjoy. You're not going to feel ripped off.
Yeah, you'll get $1's worth of your money out of this. No, it is an enjoyable experience to read with the right mindset.
Please do not send Stephen Mertz to any more universities to lecture on writing, though. Please. Please.
So, next time I'll be talking about the short mystery thriller or suspense novella, I guess you could call. A Bucket Full of Bullets, a Dominic Long G-Man story.
When you told me about that book, I was like, okay, this is your book, and I give it to you. You can do that one, and I'll do the next one, But oh my god, I had to buy this one. I just had to buy it.
I got this 2 days ago for 99 cents, and because both of us bought it, the price has gone up to $1.14.
Really?
Yeah. We are directly influencing the market already.
The market price of this book, yeah.
Yeah, and this is about a really badass black fedora, gray shark suit wearing G-Man who wields twin Thompsons named Bessie and Belle.
Oh my god.
Who he refers to as his girls.
Oh my god.
So, if you enjoyed our discussion of China Strike, look forward to A Bucket Full of Bullets, a Dominic Long G-Man story.
Oh my god.
The next time we record.
I'm going to have to take some real time to prepare for that.
I can't wait.
Thank you everyone for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks.